Hello everyone, I Dr. Vibha Rathore, Department of History, BSSS College, Bhopal. I am back again with part 2. Part 1 it was Cold War and second part with Cold War again I am going to start. Now second part I am going to talk about the stages, different stages, and because of these stages how the tension became increased between these two countries, USA and USSR. So let us start the topic Cold War Part 2. Emergence of two blocs. As you can see in the slide that these two countries now they separated on their ideologies. As I said in previous part that the communism was followed by Russia and capitalism was followed by USA. So their ideology was different, political distrust came up and different diplomatic policies also they started bringing between them. So lot of issues taken place and the entire world was also divided into two different blocks. After the Second World War, USA and USSR became two superpowers. One nation tried to reduce the power of other and indirectly the competition between the superpowers it led to the Cold War. And then the American country they started taking lead in capitalism and Russia they started moving towards socialism. So in that way the world was divided into two ideological orders. Stages of the Cold War, this is very important. Here if you can see that the first stage which started from 1946, it is just after the Second World War. The first stage and different events started in from 1946 to 1949, but this Cold War ended around 1989. So it was a long time span where these two countries were in the enmity. But yes, of course, it was the war. As I said, it was in their minds. No arm, no weapons, no army were there on the field. First stage, it is from 1946 to 1949. Second stage, that 1949 to 1953. Third stage, 1953 to 1958. Then fourth stage from 1959 to 1962. Fifth stage 1963 to 1979, and the last stage, or we can say this was the end time period of Cold War that started from 1980 and continued till 1989. So let us focus on these different stages, that how the relationship of these two countries became tensed and how it affected the entire world. First stage, it is all about 1946 to 1949. As Hall and Fontaine are of the opinion that Cold War was not started only in 1945 but started in 1917. Why 1917? Because 1917 was the time period of Russian Revolution and first time that Russia was brought the concept of communism or socialism because of Bolshevik revolution. Then Soviet Russia, in this time period he established his relations with Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Yugoslavia and other Eastern European countries. So here you need to understand that Russia tried to capture Eastern Europe and he wanted to bring socialism or communism in all these Eastern European countries. Then USA financial aid to the countries, and as you all know that after Second World War all the countries economic condition was deteriorated. So for that purpose USA tried to bring all these countries in his own camp. For that purpose he brought some financial aids. So Truman Doctrine and Marshall Plan of 1947, it is very important. So in order to reduce Russia's hegemony, America helped Greece and Turkey by adopting Truman Doctrine. What is this doctrine? In March 1947, President Harry Truman announced his intentions to authorize $400 million in emergency assistance to the countries that could fall victim due to communism. So these countries included Greece and Turkey was also there. So then in June 1947, Secretary of State George Marshall, he proposed another financial plan that is known as Marshall Plan. So here we can say that USA brought some financial aid to the European countries. One, it is that based on Truman Doctrine, and second, it is the Marshall Plan. USSR. Now in response, USSR also brought some financial policies with the European countries, and then firstly he brought the Molotov Plan again in 1947 for the countries who started following the communism. So Molotov Plan was a system created by Soviet Union in response to Marshall Plan in order to provide and to rebuild the countries in Eastern Europe that were politically and economically aligned to the Soviet Union. It was actually known as Brother Plan in Soviet Union. Next, Russia has taken another step to brought more countries under his camp. So he brought another plan that is known as Cominform in 1947. Then communist parties of Soviet Union, Poland, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Italy, France gathered near Warsaw and created the Cominform, an information bureau located in Belgrade, aggravated the Cold War. Obviously, USA already brought the financial plan, and in response, Russia has, or USSR has also brought some other financial plan. So it created a gap between these two countries. Next plan, again it was introduced by USSR, that is known as the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance. In short, we can call it CMEA 1949. Then in January, in response to Marshall Plan, again USSR created a financial aid that is known as CMEA. Next and very important event which took place in this first phase, that is known as Berlin Blockade. In 1948, Russia blockaded Berlin. Berlin, actually it was the capital of Germany. So how these two countries divided Germany, that is the next part of the slide. So it was the first open test of Cold War which helped to bring forth the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and after that another concept came up, that is NATO. So here you can see the map of Germany. Here it is the West Germany, and here it is Berlin that was divided in East Germany. So right now present day we can see that unified Germany, this Germany was not unified, divided into West Germany and East Germany between these two camps. This map, what is the Berlin Blockade actually? So I am just doing underline here this part which you can see in red color. This red color part, it was actually occupied by USSR. This blue part of Germany, it was occupied by France. This green part was occupied by Britain. And this ochre yellow part, it was occupied by USA. So here you can see that the entire Berlin was divided between these big powers, and USSR, what they did, they blocked this entire area of this Berlin, this red part, and they put some army in that. So they were actually trying to, that USSR actually trying to weak the economy of the Western European Berlin. So this event in history, it is known as Berlin Blockade. Then this was the Cold War in 1953. That first hydrogen bomb was made by USA. USSR also made, and death of Stalin, it destroyed the entire system in Russia. Then 1961, the Berlin Wall was built, and this is known as concrete manifestation. The next and very important event which took place, that is the formation of NATO. Then whatever financial aid brought by Russia, in response of that, America, they brought the concept of NATO, which is known as North Atlantic Treaty. It was framed on 4th April 1949, and it was signed for 20 years in Washington by USA, Canada and other 10 European countries. In the same time period when this NATO was formed, Same time period 1949, China became a communist country with the help of Mao Zedong. So the formation of Communist Republic of China on October 1st, 1949, it also intensified the Cold War because another new country who accepted the concept of communism, it became more closer with Russia. Next event, that is Korean crisis. Korea was divided into North and South Korea, and both the countries in 1950, the Cold War, this Cold War, because of this North Korea and South Korea, it turned into an armed conflict. So this Korean War brought China and Russia closer. North Korea was USSR dominated and South Korea was USA dominated. Then with the help of UNO, America sent a military aid to South Korea. However, both North Korea and South Korea later in 1953, they signed a treaty and the war between them ended. Here you can see the map. This is the map of North Korea and South Korea. This all part, it was near the China. So communism was already accepted by this North Korean, and South Korea was influenced by USA. The Cold War was therefore not exclusively a struggle between the US and the USSR, but a global conflict that affected many countries, particularly the continent of Europe. So indeed, Europe divided into two blocs became one of the main threats of the war. In Western Europe, the European integration process began with the support of the United States, while the countries of Eastern Europe became satellites of USSR. The third stage of the Cold War, this is 1953 to 1959. USA already good in nuclear weapons. This created tension in USSR. So USSR took initiative and did nuclear test. So he tested its first nuclear device in August 1953 in a competition with USA. Then Seattle and Meadow to check the onward march of communism in Southeast Asia and Middle East America formed SEATO and in 1954, and in order to reduce Russia's influence, and MEDO in 1955 in Middle East. So both the countries were continuously doing one or the other thing in their response, which was creating more tensions in their relations. Then Warsaw Pact was signed in 1955. The USSR retaliated this move by forming a communist defense pact, better known as Warsaw Pact. It aimed at countering the assault of imperialism and capitalism. This divided the whole world into two groups. One is American bloc and Soviet bloc. So Warsaw Pact was actually brought these two countries separated, and then other countries who were the followers of USA and USSR, they also divided in different two bloc camps. Fourth stage 1959 to 1962, Khrushchev's visit to USA. Gradually we can say that leaders, they were trying to reduce the tension in both the continents. So Khrushchev visited USA around 15th to 28th September in 1959. And then he had important talks with President Eisenhower. This eased the international tension, and in June 1960, four big powers I can say, one is America, then Britain, then France, and obviously USSR, they all agreed to hold a summit conference at Paris. But it was failed and added fuel to the fire, and the Soviet Union charged America for infringement of peace. So he tried, but then two relations were very much tensed. The important event you may have heard about, that is the story of Berlin War. How the Berlin, which was the part of Germany, this entire city was divided by a huge concrete wall. So this is known as Berlin War crisis of 1961. In 1961, the Berlin War crisis and the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the Soviet Union and the USA on the verge of armed conflict. In picture you can see there is a wall which is dividing the entire city. This wall brought again a huge tension between these two countries. Another very important event, that is Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1962, Cuba's missile crisis contributed a lot to the Cold War, and the Soviet Union wanted to build a missile base in Cuba, and he did that. As this news was there in newspaper at that time. Another slide, here you can see in this, I have brought a map. This is the Cuba, right? And here you can see in this small island, Russia, they launched the missile, and with the help of this missile, Russia wanted to destroy entire USA. So the arrows which you can see here in this slide, in this picture, these all were the missiles, and these missiles were launched to destroy the entire USA. So on October 24th, 1962, the USA imposed strict quarantine on the military equipment reaching Cuban harbors and declared that any missile fired from Cuba or any other country in the Western Hemisphere would be taken as the attack on USA. Then USA also decided that if USSR is going to use these missiles in response, USA is also going to declare a war against USSR. So in that, Cuban missile event was reduced, and USSR, they took back all the missiles from the Cuba, but it created a conflict, more conflict in these two regions. Fifth stage, it is from 1963 to 1979. The Cold War began to relax around 1962. Though from 1963 to 1970, it is still flared in Vietnam, South Asia, Middle East and Berlin, yet certain positive changes such as visiting each other's country, summit conferences, non-proliferation treaty 1968 was also occurred. On 5th August 1963, America, Britain, Soviet Union signed a treaty partially banned nuclear tests like PTBT, and present day it is known as CTBT, and this was signed in 1964, which is known as Non-Proliferation Treaty NPT in 1968. So there was a recognition given by USA to peoples of Republic of China in 1971. This shows the reapproachment between the two powers. So again here we can say that China, which was very much closer with Russia, later it developed a good relationship with USA. Another important event, that is Arab-Israel war, which also started and brought more tension among these countries. In Arab-Israel war, the Eastern powers sided with Israel, but in 1967, the Soviet Union openly and firmly opposed the policy of Western powers. This war continued for 27 years, but on June 5th, 1975, Israel recalled its troops from the Suez Canal front and reduced the number of tanks and opened the Suez Canal for merchant ships. Sixth and the last stage, 1980 to 1989. So both the cooperation and rivalry between the great powers continued during this period. President Ronald Reagan announced the policy of remaining the allies and accelerating the arms race, and adopted a stern attitude towards the Soviet Union. During the freedom struggle of Bangladesh, America backed Pakistan and Soviet Union sided India. Since then, that friendship is going on. So in the struggle in Western Asia, America patted the back of Israel in the same way, but the Soviet Union favored the Arabs. So in 1975, Angola, the Soviet Union with the help of Cuba aborted the efforts of America, China and South Africa to support UNITA. In 1977, the Soviet Union held Ethiopia and America helped Somalia in their conflict. So here you can say that both the countries, what they are doing, they are increasing the tensions by calling or bringing other countries in their own camps. The deteriorating relations between America and Soviet Union renewed the Cold War. America expressed its inability to provide necessary security to Soviet Foreign Minister his name was Gromyko, when he attained the session of UN General Assembly in 1983. On this, the Soviet Union demanded that the UN headquarters to be shifted from America. Violating restrictions imposed on her, the Soviet Union conducted to be the basis of American national policy. And the Cold War had a great impact on international policies. It created in the world an atmosphere of terror and fanned arms race. It crippled the UNO and it divided the world again into two blocs. In 1989, the world history took a miraculous turn. The Berlin Wall, which was famous for the crisis, it was pulled down and Germany was unified in 1989. So, the Warsaw Pact was called off and cordial relations between the great powers began. In the Gulf crisis 1989 to 90, both supported the proposals of the Security Council. Demolition of communism in Eastern Europe started, which started bringing political and economic crisis in Soviet Union, and this was the ending of the Cold War. President Gorbachev of Soviet Union thought it wiser to give up the policies of the Cold War. So, gradually this Cold War was ended and both the countries, though yes we can say that USA it emerged as a superpower, and whatever policies on which the USSR was formed because of the disintegration of USSR, they left all their policies and gradually the Cold War ended. So, thank you all. I hope you understand this topic. So, thank you all. Have a good day.